Roll 1, scene 1, do set, take 1, soft sticks, marker.
Grant, thank you for being a part of this documentary. This story should have been told long ago.
I agree. It's long overdue.
Being from the neighborhood and a historian, I look forward to hearing your perspective.
Madison, before we get started, I have to be honest. There's not enough time in your camera or this project to capture the people and the legacy of the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood.
Well, sir, start at the beginning. Tell me about the community.
What I like to braggartly say, the oldest portion or the start of Beaumont, the start of it all. The churches, faith-based community within the neighborhood is older than something celebrated throughout all of Southeast Texas, which is known as Gladys City, Boomtown.
You can see that's very early on, probably early 1900s at the latest. And they're the oldest African-American community in Beaumont. After the Civil War was over, emancipated people began to move into Beaumont. This is the 1800s, 1870s, 80s, and 1890s. The population of Beaumont in about 1890 was about 45% African American. And they provided most of the labor for the sawmills. So, and that was Beaumont's big business at that time. This was before the oil boom. So Beaumont was a lumber boom town in the 1890s. And so they lived near where they worked. And the lumber companies, the sawmills, were all located in downtown Beaumont.
With employment opportunities, blacks in this area started to build a foundation that would be the beginning of a legacy.
The community within itself is very historical and significant when it comes to the establishment of Beaumont as we know it.
So that became the early seed of the Charlton-Pollard community. It did not acquire that name for some time after that. It was actually came to be known as the South End for a long time.
This neighborhood educated, was the only area to educate African Americans at one point in time. And they were educating African Americans or blacks as far east as Birmingham, Alabama, and as far west as California.
For decades, in the face of adversity, the South End nurtured an environment that supported growth and development of its citizens, families, and the community.
Of course, it was the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood was a village. If I walked from here to my home and I disrespected an adult, that adult would put something on me, and then maybe another one see her chastise me, she would put something on me, or he, and then when I get home, my mom would put the board on me. So hey, there was a lot of respect, and it did take a village to raise a child.
My grandmother's house was between there. Miss Abbott, which was the secretary at the house, it was us at times against the world. You were down here and it was low woods. It was what they said it was. It was stated in some cases we wasn't supposed to amount to be anything. So the people that were elders and the people in between were ones to make sure that we were gonna be something because they were gonna teach us right. They're gonna make sure that we are a fruit and fiber of a community that cared about people. And that, to me, means more than anything when you start looking at it, because it put backbone and character in individuals.
We make sure that the children were fed every morning. They are coming to schoolhouse.
It was safe. We didn't have to worry about a thing. I mean, we went to the neighborhood whereas we could keep our doors unlocked, and nobody would, come to your house or just try to open the door, try to come in, because the neighborhood was just safe. Everybody knew everybody.
I can't visualize people being sad and, full of fear. I don't recall that at all. We never locked our doors, never. And we never had anybody break in.
It was hard. I mean, it was hard. It really was. You're gonna have me crying because we really didn't know that we were poor. I mean, it was because that was something that was kept from us. People around here just didn't know they were poor. They just thought that it was everyday life for them. So we just felt like, you know, this is how we're supposed to live.
The businessmen live in the community. The doctors, your dentists, your lawyers, they lived in the community. You saw everything in the community, so you knew you could be everything you wanted to be and move in the right direction because of what they were saying to us, and what you were seeing in front of you was reality.
We know that we had very good teachers. We know the neighborhood was a tight-knit neighborhood, and the kids knew each other. They took up for each other, they fought for each other, and they enjoyed each other.
We are close-knit and active wherever we are. It's because of what was put and stored in us. So I could say this, Charlton-Pollard have created some giants in this country. And this community has created some giants in this world.
The saying, it takes a village to raise a child, I think that Charlton-Pollard embodies that as much as anything I've ever seen.
The people of this neighborhood were resourceful. Many became entrepreneurs, and others with degrees provided services to sustain the community.
You had the clinics, the doctors, you had your pharmacy, you had everything right here on Irving Street. You had your barber shops, your beauty shops. You had another pharmacy down there on Fowler Pharmacy, was on the corner of Grant and Irving, and you had entertainment.
The stores and the service stations and the barbers and people like that during the 20s. I'd say Beaumont was like a mini model of the Tulsa, Greenwood and Tulsa, you know. We developed our own community and our churches and places like that, very important to us. And Charlton-Pollard was a very important part of this.
So the money did stay within the African American businesses. You know, it was not taken out into the greater community as much. And so those businesses thrived during that time.
Everything was out here. Everything was out here, and it was just fun. Loved to be out here.
Irving Street is one of the main business communities. On Irving Street, one of the prominent places that after the football games, everybody would show up. A restaurant, Lily and Elmo's. I remember the Gym Theater. I remember the Chicken Shack, the International Club.
Tillman Barbecue, they had some of the best barbecue in the state of Texas. And right across the street, there was another one called the Aristocrat. You had your shoe repair shops on there. I mean, it was money in circulation.
It was a renaissance right here. And in that renaissance, you had everything you needed to make it in life. And whenever you thought you was slick enough and big enough, you can slide down to Irving Street and listen to some of that good music and hurry back home or wherever before somebody noticed you.
It was kind of like Las Vegas. On a Friday and Saturday nights, you couldn't walk down Irving Street. You couldn't drive down Irving Street because it was this in the street. It was astronomical. You wouldn't believe it, just like Vegas is now.
The South End was home to venues that featured entertainers from across the country. These artists would slide through town on what they called the chitlin circuit.
The chitlin circuit, that, if I had to define that would go back to the integration and segregation part. What the chitlin circuit meant is that when a black artist came to Beaumont, that didn't make any difference whether they played in the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood or any other club in Beaumont. They had to stay with bed and breakfast. They had to stay in the neighborhood they could not stay at the hotels.
I like to say that icons passed through my neighborhood before they were actually icons, like Ike and Tina Turner, like Gladys Knight, like the Shylights, the Commodores. A lot of different people, passed through the area in participation with the Chitlin Circus, so that those artists and musicians would be able to get their stories out as well.
The 20s, as you know, B.B. King, Laura Folsom, those guys, they were all entertainers. Etta James, like Tina Turner, James Brown, just a whole myth of them.
Money circulated, businesses thrived, people prospered, and created strong bonds. The origin of this success was built on the desire to educate others. Education was the cornerstone of this community.
There were two early educators in Beaumont, Charles-Pollard Charlton, who had come here from Tyler County, and a gentleman who already lived here named Woodson Pipkin. And they actually formed the first school for African Americans in Beaumont. And as the enrollment increased, they moved. They started out in a home, and then they moved into a church, and then they finally built a school in the North End, and it was called the Charlton School. And one of Mr. Charlton's daughters married a man named Thomas T. Pollard, who had come here in the late 1880s, I believe 1889. He came here and started an African American school, and he married one of Mr. Charlton's daughters. Eventually, in 1917, a school was built in the South End, and it was known as the South End School or the Pollard School. And in 1924, the Beaumont School District, which had administered both white and black schools for a long time, decided to build a new big brick high school for African Americans. And so they moved the students from the North End and the South End and put them both in this new building, which was in this community south of the port. And it was Charlton-Pollard. And that's when Charlton-Pollard Community Neighborhood became named that.
It was great because the teachers cared about you. Like I said, at that time, teachers lived in the community. So they cared about you because they didn't hesitate to give you that love, as they called it sometime, when you needed it. Or they didn't hesitate to call your grandmother and say, Miss Alfred, I need you to come down here. Just come pay a visit. Walk down here and pay a visit. Those things are things that it gives you, it keeps you on the straight and narrow, I put it like that.
All the teachers were really nice, but they wanted you to learn. They were serious about your education. We didn't have the best of things in the neighborhood. We didn't have the best of things in the school. We had hand-me-downs. We didn't have the best of things at home. We had hand-me-downs, but you would never know it because the teachers taught us what we needed to know to educate us and to get us where we needed to go. And so did our parents. Our parents stuck with us.
They would be disgusted because they couldn't get the supplies that they needed. That was a big hindrance, which means, so when they would go to summer school, a lot of them went to summer school, they would go to Prairie View, they would get books and stuff and get material from there and get stuff for us to work with, and they would create it. So we would be doing some college work, So it was hard for them, but they made it easy. We didn't know it was hard for them at that time. We know it now, but at the time we didn't know it because it was a smooth transition for them.
Many people have graduated from Charlton-Pollard High School and went on to do great things, great things. They have put Beaumont on the map. Some of these people that have gone off, they have become doctors and lawyers and you name it, NFL football players, NBA basketball players. We've had some, we've represented almost every field that could be reached.
Striving for excellence academically was drilled into students by educators. the students carried that desire for excellence into the field of athletics.
The tiny town of Beaumont, Texas, captured the most attention from the news media when its mayor made this surprising announcement.
Whereas the 16 professional football players turned out by high schools of Beaumont, Texas, constitute twice the amount any other city can claim. Now, therefore, I, Ken Ritter, mayor of the city of Beaumont, Texas, do hereby officially proclaim Beaumont, Texas, the professional football capital of the world.
Beaumont, because of what it was, as Sonny Perkins would say, South End, Texas, it was football capital of the world. We had more professional football players from this little town than anywhere in the country, in the world. That gives you self-pride. And CP, it won the track, district track, something like 15, 16 years in a row. The ladies were the same way. So you had to be competitive to get on the field. You had to be on your A game.
Legendary meetings on the gridiron with a crosstown rival would bring fierce competition, a good time, and attention to Beaumont.
The Soul Bowl was between Charlton-Pollard and Heber High School. Everybody came out. There was so many people. I mean, everybody was coming out to the Soul Bowl because that's what Heber always bragged on themselves, and Charlton always bragged on themselves. Who was the best school? That we tried to just be rivals, and we still are rivals. If you ask me today, we're still rivals.
Looking, Coach Riley Smith was our coach, and so all three of his sons played for Charlton-Pollard, and all three of his sons got scholarships, and all three of them played pro ball. So it was exciting, very, very exciting. My boyfriend played football for Heber, so that was a nightmare. Because they would always say that, I would be pulling for Heber, but no, I would be pulling for Charlton.
They would come back home for that game. So it was a family reunion. There were rivalries, but it was still a family reunion because it was a community reunion.
A group of people, a neighborhood that has endured from humble beginnings and found success. Of course they're going to want to share their story. They are a proud people.
The sense of pride comes from the people in the community and the graduates. We've had graduates from Charlton-Pollard that has moved into jobs and things that has really helped our community and our nation.
They had a feeling of solidarity. This is our community, and I think that started very early on, back in the 1800s.
Way back, from our forefathers, way back. So, like I said, my aunt taught at Charlton-Pollard, and she taught math. And she was the cheerleader coach. And so they had so much pride in what they were doing, and it just lingered on throughout the years.
It's that their pride is infectious, if I can. It's infectious, and my ancestors and my elders to carry that story, to carry those, historical significance, whether it was good or bad, it still built a sense of pride within us.
Thank you for allowing us to begin celebrating another mass reunion.
Amen.
We have come a long way since completing our education at Charlton-Pollard High School.
A devastating blow was dealt to the community and the alumni of Charlton-Pollard High when the school, the cornerstone of the neighborhood, was torn down in 1975.
When I drive and I look and I see a parking lot where the school was, I miss the presence of the school. When I pass those areas, I recall the days and the things that took place out there.
The memories. School not there anymore.
It's not there anymore. It's not the same.
The significance of this area and the institutions that were built throughout. We have not, if we can't see them and use these establishments or these institutions or edifices, at least have a historical marker that shows their significance.
And so it just hurt. It hurt to see the building torn down where it's just nothing there, nothing left of it. So, but you can't take it out of my heart. You can't take it out of my heart. That's my school. I love Charlton-Pollard, and I will be a bulldog all my life, you know. I think even when I go to heaven, I'm gonna have to give me a little bulldog. Jesus gonna have to give me a bulldog. Maybe we can make the bulldog the mascot of heaven.
I am in awe of the richness of this community, from its origins, the life and time in the community, and the importance of education.
I'm glad you have an appreciation for our history. If the people knew more, I feel they would appreciate it as well.
If I asked you to take a moment and close your eyes. When you think about the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood, what images do you see? What do you hear?
There's so much.
I see people coming together, a close-knit neighborhood regardless to race, creed, or culture.
Oh, Lord, I can hear the ambulance passing every weekend, really almost every day.
I see a community being able to walk to and from with close-knit access to commerce, as well as qualities of life, quality goods, quality services.
I would see a W.N. McCarty, which was a preacher in the south end of Beaumont at Starlight Baptist Church.
Here are the cheerleaders out here they're having a pep rally. That's hey, it was nothing like having a pep rally on Friday before the game, because I mean the whole school was involved. It was noise. Everybody was happy, and you knew that you were going to win the game. So I never let that leave me.
I see parades happening in this area from football game nights with the Charlton-Pollard High School Bulldogs.
I would see a Calvin Williams. I would see a Paul Brown. I would see a John Gerard. I would see a Sonny Perkins.
You really take care of business? I'm business man. All right.
I would see a Frank Como. I would see Miss Knighton. I would see people that were successful.
I see an area that went from the peak of its prime to almost desolate, and an opportunity for me and individuals like me to tell a story that may never be told.
In 2011, the return of a familiar name on a school in the South End connected the historic past to the present with the goal of educating future generations.
And they are very proud of this school here because they named this elementary school. We petitioned for this school to be named Charlton-Pollard Elementary.
We all decided we're going down there in blue and white, and we're going to tell them, the school board, that we want this new school that's being built. We want its name to be Charlton-Pollard. Not only that, we want their colors to be blue and white. And not only that, we want their mascot to be a bulldog.
Then when they came up with the name Charlton-Pollard Elementary, I was ecstatic because now you're carrying on not just names, but legacies.
It's basically my foundation. You know, this is how I came up. All my morals and my thoughts and things that I respect, it was instilled in me by the teachers in the Charlton-Pollard school board. I mean, not school board, but school rooms.
If ever there's a high school built in this part of town again, we would like that high school to be named Charlton-Pollard. It takes something away from us when we lose our identity and a name that we work so hard to earn.
It is something that will never die, and that is the spirit of Charlton-Pollard and what they did for us in making sure we knew that education was the way out and was the right way out. And we need to maintain that thought and idea and movement today.
Madison, we stand on the shoulders of giants, at least to us, and we will celebrate them every time we had a chance. At reunions, get-together, or when anyone mentions the community.
With everything you've shared, I imagine this will be a difficult question for you. What does the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood mean to you?
This neighborhood is a fruit and fiber of a tremendous number of people that have led Beaumont in the right direction, that have led this country, because there were people from this community, as all over the country, that was leaders, that was doctors, lawyers, and business owners.
I am of a diaspora that's that's overlooked at times. Being African American and young African American, I don't get to read in history books about my diaspora unless it's either in slave chains, or later on you hear about bits and pieces of individuals like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, and it goes deeper than those individuals. You know, what about Mr. Charlton? What about Mr. Pollard? What about Mr. Pipkin from this area that educated African Americans as far east and west? Yeah, what about, you know, the John Gerard's barber shop, Miss Clara's Foods, Dunbar Elementary, you know, those entities that I saw on their way out. And it's hard to imagine, you know, individuals that are older than you explain or express their zeal to their time and their excitement of things that were going on around them. And then you see the phase out of that era, the phase out of those stories, and you try to go back to find just bits and pieces, if it's nothing but a slab where I can relate to my history here.
Charlton as a whole, Charlton-Pollard neighborhood as a whole is a family. We, like I said, we had each other's back. If my friend came to my house, just like my mama scolded us out, she's scolding you out. She scolded my friends out too. I'm sorry. But, and they will tell you that it was just something that we cherish.
From the 1800s until now, words like resilient, determined, and strong-willed have been used to describe the descendants of the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood. Qualities and characteristics that will drive this community into a bright future.
I see people with genuine friendship and concern to each other, people watching out for each other, people caring for each other. So the things I see in the future of this neighborhood, I see a lot of good things.
That the spirit of Charlton-Pollard lives on, and I am one who would like to continue to give individuals that spark of spirit from Charlton-Pollard, the historical significance. I will always continue to advocate for the residents in my area and the historical significance so that we may be sustainable from now to years to come. But we still have pride. We know we're going to be resilient. We know that much. And they're going to all know our story.
Grant, you're right. There is not enough time in this documentary to tell the entire story. The highs and lows, the heartache and success. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood?
Madison, what you learned from me today is only the start of the conversation.
Are we good on time?
Just the start of the conversation?
Yes, just the beginning.
What else can you tell me about the Charlton-Pollard neighborhood?